Well, welcome everyone to the Window into Paris webcast live from COP21. Thanks for joining us to get a little bit of an inside look at this historic event that's happening in Paris, France. So my name is Megan, and I am the program's coordinator at Climate Generation, a Well-Steger Legacy. And we are a nonprofit in Minneapolis, Minnesota, so close to you guys in Shakopee. And we educate and empower people to engage in solutions to climate change. And we recognize that educators are critical messengers of energy and climate literacy for hundreds of students every year, just like you guys there in Shakopee. And so we are leading a group of 10 education ambassadors in our Window into Paris program at the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change 21st Conference of the Parties. So we call that COP21 for short in Paris, and that is where Mr. Koenig is right now. So these teachers are engaging in the international climate negotiations as both learners and communicators back to their classrooms and communities. So they represent diverse subject areas, grade levels, and educational settings from the entire country. And this year's negotiations, for the first time in over 20 years, aim to achieve a legally binding and universal agreement on climate with the aim of keeping global warming below 2 degrees Celsius globally. So that is the main goal of the negotiations these 2 weeks. And so today we have Mr. Koenig here with us to tell a little bit about his perspective and what they have been up to in Paris this week as part of COP21. And so we'll have him give a little bit of an overview, and then we'll have time at the end for Q&A from the class in Shakopee. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Koenig.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Can everybody hear me? I probably, yeah, I'll just assume you can. Yeah, so I want to actually just thank Climate Generation for giving us a chance to do this and really opening my eyes up to really the gravity of the situation and that's on here in Paris and how important it is for our climate. And I'm actually just going to start to show you some of my slides and talk a little bit through them. And the first one, is this going to work? Yep, they did. I don't know if they see it though.
They see that.
You think so?
Oh, here. Megan, is that what you see?
We don't see it yet.
Uh-oh. Okay, wait a minute.
What do you see now, Megan?
Just you guys.
Okay.
We have to change the order you do it.
Yeah, just that. Okay.
There we go.
Good? Okay, great. Thanks. Sorry about that.
No, it's on here.
All right. So yeah, it's as it was alluded to, this COP21 Conference of the Parties. It's the 21st one. I think it's very important to note that there hasn't really been a real legally binding agreement through all the countries ever. And this is really our best chance of doing that. And I wrote on there the meeting to save the planet. And to be honest, I probably wouldn't have wrote that a couple of weeks ago, but being here and experiencing what I've experienced this week, I fully believe that. If something doesn't happen on, well, already this Saturday, I think we're in a real bind here when it comes to climate change. So this was a picture that I took. Actually, it's on the Eiffel Tower. They did a lot of kind of cool things here in Paris about just, I think, also just expressing the importance of the situation. So obviously you can say hashtag Love Earth. There's a lot of different things that they're passing along on the Eiffel Tower, projecting on the Eiffel Tower. And really all over Paris there are things like this to try to get people agreeing and pushing for this one initiative that we have going on. I'm gonna show you just a few of the pictures that I've seen, and this kind of struck me a little bit. This is a group from India, and they're from South India, and poor people, but there's some people that are so desperate that they are willing to probably give their life savings just to come to this event. It's such because they honestly feel, and I do too, and the climatologists, the scientific community feels as well, that if nothing is decided at these events, that their land will be completely wiped away by the ocean. So these people are from Sundarban, and it's in India, and they are fairly close to the coast. It's in South India. Maybe you guys can look it up after this is over. And it's got the largest wild population of tigers. And if the 2 degrees isn't met, that is going to be gone by the year 2050. The mangrove forest where those tigers live is going to be gone by 2050, and that's what the current science is on that situation. So they are here, they were singing, and they are just trying to draw attention to their situation, and there's so many parts to this, and there's so many people that are doing this. One thing is, I think sometimes when we live in Minnesota, we maybe feel a little bit more I guess, isolated from what's happening, but there are people that are so desperate at these events that it's really eye-opening, and it's something that's definitely going to change my life. Tell you a little bit about some people that we meet. This is literally riding on the bus from the station where we took our subway to the conference itself. Sitting next to one of the people that we were with was the president of Mozambique, and he actually wanted to have his picture taken with us. And there are just, it's 196 countries. They're all there. They're all present. There's many of the leaders are there. Many of the presidents are there, trying to figure out the best way to solve the crisis that we are in right now. It's not just president, it's anyone who's got very strong interest, and this again just highlights, I think, some of the people that are there. This group is actually called the Grandparents Climate Campaign of Norway. I had a chance to talk to these people just randomly. Their main concern is that, well, Norway is a coastal country. They have grandchildren. They recognize that number 2 degrees matters for their grandkids, because with sea level rise, it could definitely wipe out their coastal cities as well. So they're actually a pretty large force out at the conference, and it's interesting to see that it's all different types of people that are all trying to really give their plea for the same thing. Today was an extraordinary day, to say the least. We went to the U.S. Embassy, which in itself was just eye-opening. Getting through security, you can't have cameras in there. This was taken by one of his workers, so we couldn't have our own cameras in there. And just what we were able to do, and in that book right there, I took a picture of it. I don't know if Mr. Loisel showed you or not, but there's a few of your letters in that book, and he is going to try to give that book to, he expressed that he will try to give that book to President Obama. He also expressed that he's going to share specific stories and specific details that we talked about in the meeting with him with President Obama too. And this is Dr. John Holdren. He's the science advisor directly to the president. It was interesting hearing him talk. He has the authority to interrupt a dinner that they're having if he wants to. So that just kind of shows you how powerful this person is, and also extraordinary how down to earth he was. He really, really understands kind of the need for education, and that was my sort of 2 minutes. Is I really wanted to tell him that I think that we need more climate education in the standards than we currently have right now. So just I threw out the blog just to try to make sense of all these numbers. There's a lot of numbers that we hear at COP, and the key that the people that are really trying to shoot for is the 2 degrees Celsius. They consider that quote unquote safe. That can kind of be used loosely though, because that quote unquote safe area, and I don't know if you can see this at all, but you know, if we're only at 2 degrees Celsius by the year 2100, we're still going to have severe flooding. Amsterdam will probably be flooded. If it raises 2 degrees Celsius, we're going to probably have some really difficult times in our oceans. Carbon dioxide is absorbed by oceans, so if we increase the carbon dioxide amount, we're going to have very acidic oceans. That's what carbon dioxide does to water. Our coral is going to be in trouble. Pretty much if you go down to where we're at for heat, every European summer will probably be a heat wave. If you can kind of go through and go down just a little bit more of what those 2 degrees is, and that's considered the safe limit. And I really found that was a little disconcerting, being at these places and hearing people, if the sea level does rise that 1.04 meters, their lives are endangered and they will need to move. Their countries will no longer be here. So there is what I would call an extremely grassroots push to get, instead of having people thinking about that 2 degrees Celsius, to kind of come down to this 1.5 Celsius. And this is really extraordinary to watch these people talk and go through and why it's so important. Robert Redford put on an event where he had some tribal leaders from Papua New Guinea. There were people from the Marshall Islands, which I would also encourage you to check out their plight already. And then someone from Indonesia talking about, and it's really been an indigenous people push where they are trying to get this number down to 1.5. And the 2 degree number was actually agreed upon that was a good number by the United Nations before this event. And really it's been this real grassroots push by indigenous people and by concerned people for these places that actually have on the table now 1.5. It's being talked about. So it's something where these groups are potentially causing change and being a vehicle of change for really the world. The last thing that I'll kind of talk about is Minnesota's place and where we are in this whole equation. We had an opportunity to talk to some former policy makers and some policy makers right now, and just hearing them speak on where we are at as a state. We're a little bit above the game, which is something that we can maybe be proud of, but we still have a lot more that we can do. So right now the current United States is pledging to drop 26% by 2050, the amount of carbon emissions. Minnesota is actually trying to get 40%. So we're trying to do a little bit more than what the United States itself is doing. We also had a chance to meet with some business people, and there's a picture with Laura Bishop here, who's the vice president of Best Buy. And really, what are they doing, and what certain companies are trying to do. So there's that 2 degree kind of area that we're really hoping is going to be agreed upon, and like an ideal dreamland would be the 1.5 degree. So businesses are really trying to take it upon themselves to recognize that this is such a big deal that maybe they can do something to make up that difference. So it's been interesting to talk to some of the people from Minnesota here and what they're able to do. Last, I just kind of want to, there's a lot of youth here. They're doing a lot of demonstrations. They're trying to get their voices out. And I'm going to leave you with just a question on what can you do. And I know we're going to take some questions here in a second, but one thing that I really want you to ponder is just and it's something that I will admit not doing a good enough job of teaching to you, is just the gravity of the situation and how important this conference is. So I want to just kind of leave you with that. What can you do? And then I'll take some questions.
All right, thanks. So yeah, Jenna or someone in the classroom there, if you want to unmute, and we'll take questions. Thanks.
I have a question.
Okay, real loud.
How much does energy efficient things really help?
Hear that?
Well, so,
Jenna, translate.
Yeah. Yep. How much do energy efficient things like appliances and things?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how much do energy efficient appliances really help?
all right. I'm not a complete expert on energy efficient appliances. I will tell you what I've learned here in Paris so far. There's places around the city of Paris that are called the Solution, like a Solution Conference, where they have different energy efficient appliances, and they have energy efficient cars. One thing that I thought was interesting is that by the year 2000, and I don't know the exact number, but cars will be in the United States. We have to have the average mile per gallon per car is going to be 54 miles per gallon, which I think is that's definitely more than my car gets, and I thought I was driving an energy efficient car. But going to your question, appliances, I think every little bit does count. You know, it's so interesting to try to figure out the whole equation, though. It is a huge equation, and every little bit counts. As kind of, idealistic as that sound, I really do. And it was interesting talking to Best Buy, because they're one of the leaders in what they call like Energy Star products, and what they're doing for just trying to make sure that everything is more energy efficient. You're going to see this all in your lifetimes for sure, in my lifetime too. We're going to see all of our plants trying to be as energy efficient as possible, especially if we're going to meet this new 2-degree quota. It's going to have to come from all of our appliances. And really, what I think is the main thing, though, is where do we get that energy from? So that's what's really being talked about, and that's what I think is going to be the biggest thing, is really how to change the whole system from fossil fuels to wind and solar and other renewables, if you will. So I think that's where the biggest push is going to come, but obviously doing whatever we can do will help. And actually, I'll say one more thing about that. And really going with that, one of the things that I've heard is like the best way to do that is to basically just give really big tax breaks for countries that are trying to, or not countries, just companies that are trying to go green and trying to get their energy from green sources. And not punishing coal and oil, but really just trying to give a carrot to companies that are trying to produce their energy in a green sort of way. Next question.
Have you seen anything in Paris, deal with the water pollution problems in Minnesota?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't think that it is addressed so much at the main conference, but I've seen other auxiliary conferences going around that do discuss water pollution, and I know that's been a topic that we've talked about in our class. But the main point of this conference in general is strictly the climate problem. There are groups. So there's something called the Green Zone, where groups set up, and it's where the general public can visit. And that's where I've been spending a lot of the time. And there are groups that are very much focused on that. But in the negotiations themselves, water pollution isn't one of their main concerns right now. So yeah. Logan.
What is the best way to get rid of greenhouse gases?
Ooh. Well, okay. So I think we can all do our little part. what I'm really going to be on board for now is really pushing policy though, and really, and I mean, I don't know, you might be a little young for this, but also just recognizing the businesses that you're buying your products from. Recognizing even when you get older, what you're investing in. Like, what companies are you investing in? Are you doing a good job of investing in green products versus fossil fuel burning or coal or oil? And reducing your own footprint, just being able to live within, I would guess, your carbon means even would be a way to propose something like that. Next question.
Do you think these negotiations will change the way we live in any way sooner or later?
Gosh, that's a really good question. You know what? I don't think it'll change our standard of living in any way. I really don't. I do believe that I really do think that they are going to actually come to an agreement, which is an extraordinary thing of itself. It's 196 countries have to agree on something. It boggles my mind how hard these people are working. It really does. Will it change the way we live? I don't think it will. I think that they will find a way, and we will put forth the resources to make our energy more green, and thus not even necessarily having to change completely the way our standard of living is. I think it's smart, and I think it's going a little bit above and beyond, especially now when we know that our energy that we are getting is not good and is not green. I think it is going to be I think do what you can now, and then I think in the future, I hope, I pray even that it's going to go more green, and that we won't necessarily have to change the way our standard of living. Good question.
What countries do you think have the best ideas for greenhouse gas?
Dang, Jack. I've been pretty. So like the European Union, they got this a while ago. They understood that there was a problem. So their target goal is 40%. That's way better than the 26% that the United States is putting out there. And I think it's just because they got a head start. We were too slow. We were kind of slow to the party. I think that we're going to be making a pretty decent push here. But I like what the European Union is doing, and God, a lot of the smaller countries. I mean, the sad thing is when we do our carbon footprint quiz, right? The United States, how many Earths do we take? So a lot of the smaller companies are looking towards the United States and China to kind of make up for, really that carbon budget is what they've been using. And it's like, how are you guys going to reduce your carbon budget because you are the biggest in this whole scenario? So what has the best ideas? If I had to point a finger to it, I would say Germany. And if you look in the last National Geographic, they really came out strong, and they've done some pretty neat stuff. Good question.
Bill, how are they going to enforce it? How is policy going to be enforced? Is it going to be through, like you said, carrots, or is it a stick? How do we do this? We looked at troubled waters, and we looked at the farm bill, and then that pushes for more monoculture, and it makes our waters worse. We're talking about huge carbon emission reduction. How are you going to enforce that as a policy?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. It is bound by law now. So it's an international agreement, and it's an international law. I don't know if there's ever like a climate police, or if there's going to be, I actually don't know how that's going to take place. I think really is one thing that I've learned in this conference, though, is just political pressure means a lot. So having someone come down on another country politically, whether it might be sanctions or something, I think it is that important of a document that you could see things like sanctions being placed on countries that are not meeting their climate goals or their carbon goals. But I guess I'm not the leader of that, and I don't know. And that's actually, so hopefully they're going to sign the agreement on Saturday, but we don't know, and it could go on even longer when they're really going to figure out the nuts and bolts of it all. Good question, Mr. Loisel.
So probably have time for a couple more questions, although I did just mute you because there was a little feedback, so you can unmute you. There we go.
We're just asking what the sanctions are or what they might be.
Whether they're economic sanctions or, and again, I'm not sure. Mr. Loisel is the economist in the room. That's something that I think will probably still need to be worked out. And there's going to be a COP22 and a COP23 and a COP24, and they will probably all still be referring back to this. What we hope is, what we fingers really crossed, will be the Paris Agreement. And they'll go back and they'll review what each country is doing and what they're putting forth and what their carbon emissions are. And then I'm sure that, you know, things are going to have to be dealt with if they are not meeting those agreed upon, bound by international law, you know, figures. Another question?
So China just recently had a red alert for their pollution. Is there any reaction by any countries that, or any forms of it just being reactionary to that?
You know, I think it was. We definitely got. I'll wait to be muted. There we go. Okay. We definitely. That was a topic of conversation, and I think even in the United States a little bit, it's been a really warm. I mean, globally, this will be the warmest year ever, by far. So I think that is helping with this. I think, and China is actually finally on. China was one of the ones that were a little bit wishy-washy on really jumping in, anyways, and they were on board even before this event because they knew that it was such an important thing that they needed to do. And I can't remember if it's us that our budget's 8 gigatons of carbon, or their budget's 6, or they're 6 and we're 8. But it's us two that are the biggest ones. And I think they're going to pursue green energy aggressively, simply because, like you said, they have red alerts. They have issues that they're going to need to be resolved. Nobody is going to go completely off coal or oil yet. It'd be nice, but no one's going to go off that yet. And I think with these problems, though, there's definitely going to be some change. Now, there's another question that was previous, and someone asked about technology or something, how that's going to go. And I guess I want to address one thing that's also being talked about is carbon sequestration, like machines. Like, there's interest in scaling up how to sequester carbon so that you can take it out of the atmosphere and put it into something that is unharmful. The best thing that we have to do that, we all know, is trees, but there's people that are trying to figure out ways to do this, I guess, inorganically as a new technology too. Maybe one more question?
Yeah, I think one more question would be great.
Are there like any countries or any like people that you think might get in the way of this agreement happening?
Are there any countries? I don't think. Are there any countries that will get in the way?
U.S. is trying to get away, Saudi Arabia.
I know. So okay. So one of the interesting things that they have is what's called a fossil of the day, and I'd encourage you guys to kind of look that up too. And the fossil of the day in the United Nations Conference is the country that is standing in the way the most at that time. So Saudi Arabia actually got a fossil of the day maybe, what was that, 3 days ago?
I think so.
They're,
Yeah.
yeah. There actually was not. I don't think there was a fossil of the day yesterday, and that's kind of was a surprising thing. So fingers crossed, there won't, there will be an agreement. Yeah, unfortunately, the United States is often one of the ones that can get in the way of this because we are asked to take lead. And one of the things that's really being hotly debated now, I think we're pretty close on the numbers, but one of the things that's in the article is how do you get other countries that are developing, how do you give them energy? Because they still deserve to live like, a first world country, especially if they're developing. And then one of the things that has been pledged is $100 billion to those countries, and who pays for that? And what's the definition of a developed country that can pay? What's the definition of a developing country that receives money? Who's going to pay that money? And it really, Lois, I will definitely tell you, it all comes down to the dollar. Who's going to get the money? Who's going to pay the money? And that could be one thing that kind of is a monkey wrench in these things. But really, I'm hoping it's not. And there seems to be a little bit of a positive vibe at these meetings right now. Fingers crossed. Never know though.
Great. Well, I would just like to take the time to thank you, Mr. Koenig, for sharing with us what it's been like at COP21, and for your classroom in Shakopee for those great questions. And I know we have some people on the public side viewing now, so thank you so much for joining us to get a inside look at these negotiations. If you're interested, we have a few more webcasts tomorrow from the other education ambassadors, and you can subscribe at climategen.org/COP21. But thank you so much for everybody who joined today, and we hope you have a good rest of your time there, Mr. Koenig.
Hey, thanks a lot. See you guys next week.